Did you guys hear that sound?
Members of the public are encouraged to view the meeting from their home by video streaming at watsonville.legistar.com or channel 70 for Charter or channel 99 for AT&T. The meeting is also live on Facebook on the Watsonville Police feed. The public may participate, comment during the meeting by joining the meeting from their computer, tablet, or smartphone at global.gotomeeting.com/join/772482565. Again, global.gotomeeting.com/join/772482565. The public may also comment by telephone at 1-646-749-3112, access code 772-482-565. Again, 1-646-749-3112, access code 772-482-565. People calling are asked to announce their name for the record and will be given 3 minutes to speak. Instrucciones para la reunión de hoy. Para reducir la difusión de COVID-19, se anima al público a ver la reunión desde su casa por computadora al watsonville.legistar.com o otra vez watsonville.legistar.com o canal 70 en Charter y canal 99 en AT&T. La Junta también está siendo difundida en vivo en Facebook, en español, en la página de la ciudad de Watsonville. El público puede participar, comentar durante la reunión desde su computadora, tableta o teléfono inteligente al global.gotomeeting.com/772482565. Otra vez, global.gotomeeting.com/join/772482565. El público también puede comentar por teléfono al 1-646-749-3112. Código de acceso es 772-482-565. Otra vez, 1-646-749-3112. Código 772-482-565. Se pide a las personas que llamen que anuncien su nombre para el registro y se le dará 3 minutos para hablar. So with that, we'll start with roll call.
Councilman Gomez. Estrada.
Present.
Present.
Gonzalez.
Here.
Hernandez. Hurst. Parker.
Here.
Garcia.
Here. We will follow with the Pledge of Allegiance. Ari, can you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? You're on mute, Ari. Can't hear you.
Just like my graduation speech in high school. Here we go. Ready? Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ari. Information items, there is a report of disbursements, and hopefully the council members were able to review that. We're now on to presentations and oral communications. And so this is a time for oral communications from the public. Do we have any oral communications from the public? I know there was one that was sent by email. Beatrice, did you receive that one?
I did. Do you want me to read it?
Yes, please.
I'm writing to you in support of Regeneracion's 5 principles of just COVID-19 relief and stimulus. First, I want to thank you for your swift action in aiding in keeping your community fed and healthy. In these unprecedented times, the inequity seen with environmental justice and the democratic process has been intensified. I hope to see you use the principles as a guide in the future decision-making and proposals as we move forward. Recently, the City of Santa Cruz passed a measure to ensure that all future construction is to be done free from natural gas and instead being made electric. Watsonville should take similar steps in limiting the use of natural gases. Doing so would ensure that the city is not worsening climate change impacts. Clean air and water are vital to healthy community. By taking action to limit the use of natural gases in construction, you can help keep the citizens of Watsonville healthy, as well as start to mitigate climate change impacts by beginning to reduce our dependence on fossil fuels. During this uncertain time, it is important that the voices of citizens are heard. We need to encourage citizens' involvement within the government by protecting both the people within our community and their democratic process. Encouraging involvement while still practicing safe social distances protocols is difficult, but keeping the community both informed and at the forefront of your priorities is essential, both during this time and as we move forward. This can be done through making city council meetings, both virtual and in person, a safe space regardless of documentation. Many residents of Watsonville may shy away from meetings for fear that they are undocumented in a time where citizenship is a heavy subject. Residents might also feel that they cannot participate due to language barriers and difficulty with interpreters. Another way to encourage involvement is through education and accessibility. Citizens without a computer or smartphone may not have the means to participate in local government at this time. Offering new ways to participate besides through devices would allow for a larger range of accessibility. Another way to encourage citizen involvement is voter education and vote by, I was looking at the time.
Is the time up?
We have to participate in local government at this time. Offering a new ways to participate besides through devices would allow for a larger range of accessibility. Another way to encourage involvement is through voter education and vote by mail. Now, more than ever, our voice matters at the polls. Within the upcoming election, just and safe voting processes are incredibly important in order to combat voter suppression as well as ensure citizen safety. Such processes like voter education about how to register and vote by mail are 2 ways to aid in this. Voter suppression of marginalized voices only promotes inequity, and the call for vote by mail will aid in ensuring inequity for all voices. That being said, I encourage the City of Watsonville to provide new and innovative ways to foster citizen involvement during times of uncertainty and as we move forward. I hope you see the importance of the 5 principles brought forth, as I see that they are necessary to keep in mind as we move forward as a more just, environmentally friendly, and healthy society. Thank you for your attention to this pressing matter. Catherine Molinari.
Okay. Are there any audio communications tomorrow?
Yes, Mayor. There is a member of the public that wishes to address the council. Steve, you're on now. Yes.
I would like to, first of all, acknowledge the previous speaker. Everything she said was correct. I have now been attending these meetings for no more than 2 years, and usually I always speak, and this is no exception. And I want to encourage people to attend these meetings, whether in person or virtually, online, because this is local government and it has the greatest impact on your life more than any other. Now, I want to bring to attention the fact that the city council in its infinite wisdom voted 4-3 to allow the Seaside Company to build a Chipotle drive-through. Last week, a federal court in Los Angeles cited the largest fine ever levied on a food vendor, $25 million for criminal negligence against Chipotle. Folks, this is not a brand we want in our community, particularly in the fact that we are now undergoing a pandemic and food is already in short supply, and good food as well. Chipotle has shown that they poisoned 1,100 customers. The city has a responsibility. The city councilors have a responsibility. They took an oath of office to protect the citizens of Watsonville. And Chipotle is, to be honest with you, an outlaw vendor. They should not be allowed. City attorney, the city manager, the city council need to meet with Seaside Company and Chipotle and basically tell them to hit the road. They have no business being in Watsonville. They are a disgrace. I also want to point out that even though the city did not, or apparently was not willing to acknowledge either Earth Day or Arbor Day, we still need trees. The Bridge Street project still needs to be completed. A lot of trees removed. New ones need to be replaced. We need to plant more trees. Lowhurst said more than a year ago, the city policy is planting trees. Well, Lowell, prove it. Let's get it done. I know we have money in the budget for it, and we need to recognize that in order to make global climate change go away, we need as a goal to plant at least a few hundred trees in the city of Watsonville and about a billion trees worldwide. I'm also aware of the fact that the city is under tremendous stress during this terrible, unprecedented period. I do congratulate the city for being willing to help our farm worker population. I've sent you a number of emails regarding what you can do. I had to spend for my city, our state assemblyman, just to get rubber gloves. He was able to find me a box, which we're going to use here in Pomeroy Village. So supplies are very limited. So thank you, and have a good meeting.
Thank you for your comments, Steve.
I have one other person wanting to comment on
Okay.
item, I believe. Okay, hold on. Natalie?
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
My name is Natalie Olivas. I'm an organizer with Regeneración Pájaro Valley Climate Action. I'd like to first thank the City Council for the swift and strong actions you've taken to slow the spread of coronavirus and support our community during these difficult times. We at Regeneración have published on our website a local response draft to the 5 principles of the Just COVID-19 relief to be considered and applied as we respond to the compounding crises of the threat and impacts of coronavirus, a looming economic depression, and the worsening impacts of climate change. As you know, undocumented people have been left out of the federal government stimulus, meaning many of Watsonville's residents have been provided little to no economic relief despite paying into taxes and providing key services that are the backbone of our economy. Although essential laborers are still receiving paychecks, many families are now relying on a single and in many cases reduced income. In order to adequately address these issues, I urge the City Council to take immediate actions to provide support for our community, while also setting the foundation for a just transition off fossil fuels. While I commend the city for taking necessary steps to temporarily suspend evictions, short-term interventions will not solve the worsening economic impacts nor provide our citizens with the necessities for well-being. which is why we are calling for providing more economic relief directly to the people. As the shelter-in-place mandate continues, residents continue to be at a loss for income and will not be able to pay months' worth of rent and mortgages. Our residents need immediate assistance in the forms of programs such as rent and mortgage freezes, zero interest rate loans, and other immediate relief. Another immediate proposal to address the city's decrease in revenue is for high-paid city staff, those who make over $100,000 a year, to take an immediate minimum 10% reduction in pay in order to retain the roles of other necessary city employees, fund necessary projects, and redistribute wealth among our working people. It is also vital that we take steps to prepare for a just social and economic recovery. This can be done by providing support for adult education and other programs that provide the means for jumpstarting an economic recovery by uplifting our workforce. Creating green jobs in sectors such as renewable energy, green infrastructure, and local food economies will not only provide the means for localizing our economy, but would also empower local residents to rebuild a more sustainable society. Although proposed job retrainings and education may not be immediately accessible under current circumstances, now is the time to invest and plan for their implementation. Again, I'm very proud of the recent work from our city staff and much of our local community. However, we will need even bolder and perhaps unprecedented actions in order to effectively face these issues and build a stronger, healthier, and more resilient community. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any other public communications?
I believe that's all for now.
Okay, this is now time for all communications from the council. A reminder that we only have 2 minutes to speak, and I'll go by how I see you on the screen. So Francisco, you want to go first?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to echo what's been said already. I want to really thank the community for doing their part and working to uplift each other and to help each other out. Big kudos to city staff for helping in any way they can. I'm just really proud of what the community is doing. I'd just like to remind everyone that we've really come a long way in all of this. I mean, we started in a few months ago, and this weekend a lot of people went to the beach, and it's really tempting to sort of want to sort of forget all the guidelines and think about yourself and maybe having some fun with the family. But I just want to remind everyone that that can really undo everything we've done. And so as hard as it is and counterintuitive as it is, we have to continue following the guidelines. And I'm positive that sooner rather than later we will get out of this stronger community. So thank you everyone again for supporting each other, for supporting our businesses, the community, every single person that's doing something out there. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Francisco. Ari, can we go next? I hear you. Ari, you're mute. Oh, there.
Yeah, I know. I'm unmuting. I hear feedback and dogs and other stuff, so I don't know if somebody's got their microphone on. Okay, so I wanted to thank everybody in our community, just like Francisco did, how much I love living in Watsonville. I love what people have done. I want to point out again, Project Elderly, who has continued to expand elderly care, who has continued to expand what they're doing. They're actually going into 4 different counties now, with Watsonville as the primary. I'm going to say this number, so I'd like, if anybody's listening, 818-7323. That's 818-7323. If you'd like to donate something, money, so that they can buy more, if you have something that they can use for these senior packages, please, call them. And Dean Vargas or Barbie Gomez will get back to you. They're both the co-founders. I also wanted to bring up, and Madam Mayor, maybe we can work on this as a resolution for the entire city, to show our gratitude to all our essential workers, healthcare post workers, grocery workers, farm workers, delivery folks, police, fire, and so many more. And they do it in other places. We've been doing it in small groups here in Watsonville, where we go out at maybe 7:30, 8 o'clock at night and bang your pots and pans, and everybody can be out there just saying thank you. And this is a moment for all those essential workers to know that those of us who are sheltering in place can be a part of that. So this was brought to my attention not only by a few people who are doing it here in District 7, my Parks and Rec Commissioner, Wayne Hayashibara, and a couple other folks who live here. And really, we would like to have the whole city be on the same time schedule. So, Madam Mayor, I'll leave that with you.
Well, you can, under future items, make a official request. So you can do that at the end of the meeting, okay?
I'd be happy to.
Okay, moving on, I see Aurelio.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, fellow councilmen. Like again, I mean, we can't thank them enough, the community, for all the efforts they've done. And a shout out to everyone in the community. I mean, that's from police, nurses, grocery workers, farm workers, especially. But I'd also like to shout out to our nonprofits out there. They've been the other part of our extended family, in the sense to be able to handle some of this stuff that the city can't handle, and reach out to that community. So big kudos to all the nonprofits, Community Bridget's, CAB, Pajaro Valley Shelter Services, and they continue to move forward. Again, it's going to get better. We just need to keep hanging on in there, keep following what's required. I know a lot of us want to go out and about, like Councilman Paco said. Do your exercise, get your mental health well. It's really important. You do get out there and breathe a little bit of air, but keep your distance and keep your mask on if you're going to be amongst people. So be safe and take care, everybody.
Thank you, Aurelio. Trina, can you go next?
Good afternoon, everybody. I just wanted to remind a couple things that we've had in the past. First of all, I know that we need patience and perseverance. We'll get through this. We're all in this together, and it's really important that we can keep that message consistent throughout our entire community. I also want to have gratitude for not only the healthcare workers, staff, and all of the other employees that are out there to make sure that we have all of the necessary items that this community needs in this time of this pandemic. The teddy bears theme, I think that's still going on with some of the homes that the neighbors, when they are going out and walking with the children, just to the acknowledgement that there's something that they can go out there and enjoy a little bit when they're in the fresh air. Meetings are still going on. We are doing a Zoom with all of our boards and commissions and things like that. Just wanted to remind you that we still have a survey from Santa Cruz Regional Transportation Commission, and that is for the corridor. We encourage you to go take a look at their website and give your feedback about the corridor. And that the Monterey Bay Community Power has voted the resolution for 50% off of your electric on your PG&E bill for the month of May and June utilities. And the Metro is doing what they can in terms of their services for those that absolutely have to have the bus as a necessity to get to work, to provide the services this community needs. So all of you just stay healthy. We'll get through this together. We just need to make sure that we have the persistence and the patience, and we can overcome this, but we also need to be very smart about following the guidelines. Those are really important. Thank you.
Thank you, Trina. Okay, Lowell?
Thank you very much. I'm sorry I joined a little late here. My morning exercise and walk in the slough took a little longer than necessary. But I did see most people observing all the distance suggestions as well as masks, and I know that's not the case everywhere all the time, but I think most people have an understanding of what needs to be done. They just need the will to do it. And so I'm not going to repeat all the things that everyone else has said, but I do want to thank Rivas, Assembly Member Rivas, for his work in supporting farm workers this last weekend. They had a great collection of food and non-perishable items that were dispersed to farm workers. So congratulations to our assemblymen, and we say thank you very much. Let's get busy and do the right thing, and let's keep doing the right thing, and more people need to join in with the right thing. Let's go.
Thank you very much, Lowell. Okay, in terms of my report, I was recently interviewed by Radio KSCO, and the very, very first thing that they said to me was that they recognized that the city of Watsonville was taking a lead in Santa Cruz County in informing and protecting our residents and our employees from the consequences of COVID-19. Amongst several issues that they asked me about, they wanted information about our moratorium on evictions, and they also wanted to know how it was that we were doing outreach to our immigrant and farm worker families. And so I was able to share all the work that we have been doing, and they were very pleased to hear that. And they offered to support Watsonville by the usage of their radio station should we ever need to get information out. The Santa Cruz County Housing Authority Section 8 tenants have already begun to be impacted by layoffs and reductions of working hours. As of last week, approximately 600 tenants have requested rent assistance. Now, HUD will increase the rent allocation, but only until it runs out of money nationwide. And so we don't know for how long that's going to be. But I'm hoping that at that time, when the Housing Authority runs out of money, that the city can use their CDC funds to help the Watsonville Section 8 residents. And finally, my comment on climate change. The Monterey Bay has a Green New Deal Association, and on May 7th from 9 to 10:30, they will be having a Central Coast Climate Summit. And so they are inviting K-12, higher education, and the general community to participate, and hopefully some of us will be able to participate. With that, that concludes my report. We're going to go on now, reports to council, and I think that's going to be our city manager on COVID-19 essential services update. There you are.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I appreciate the opportunity this afternoon to give you an update on our ongoing COVID-19 response efforts. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Okay. So it's hard to believe that we're now entering our 7th week of responding to this public health emergency. I wanted to provide some updates on numbers at the national level as well as here in Santa Cruz County. Just this morning, it was announced that we have now exceeded 1 million confirmed national cases across the country. Here in Santa Cruz County, we are now at 125 cases with 2 deaths and about 80 individuals who have recovered from the virus. Santa Cruz County continues to have a stay in place order that is in effect through May 3rd. I'm going to talk in a minute about their plans of extending that order this week. A faith covering order, as we all know, was issued last week, took effect on Friday at midnight, and now requires face coverings whenever in the presence of others. And the state order is still in effect indefinitely without a sunset date. I'm also sorry to report that last week we had our first positive case identified in the workplace. We had anticipated that this situation may occur, and we had protocols in place of how best to address it when it does. The employee is now self-isolating and receiving medical care and support. All potential exposures and employees that may have been exposed have been identified and alerted. County Health is conducting their own contact tracing investigation as part of that effort as well. And following notification of this positive case, we also closed one of our administrative buildings for a few days. We first received notice on a Thursday evening, so we closed the building for Friday, and obviously through the weekend did a very deep and thorough cleaning of the entire facility to ensure that it was safe for employees to return to work yesterday morning. So there are a number of extensions and modifications to health orders that were announced throughout the Bay Area yesterday. And we've been in conversations with our local county health official regarding a similar move here in Santa Cruz County with a likely extension of the shelter-in-place order to occur later this week. The extension of the health order will be similar to the other Bay Area counties. It is considering easing some restrictions for what they consider low-risk activities. They have specifically noted that that may include construction, landscaping, car sales, and elective surgeries. And again, those industries are consistent with the approach that several of the other Bay Area cities have, counties have signaled over the last couple of days. They are also considering additional restrictions around the beaches. So as it was noted earlier by some of the updates from you, Council, as the weather improves, it continues to be a challenge ensuring that folks are maintaining proper social distancing when using our local beaches. And so they are considering some additional modifications to the health order that would help to better ensure that the beaches are being used in a responsible way, and ensuring that folks that are taking advantage of this important resource are doing it in a way that is slowing the spread of the disease. This crisis continues to take a significant toll on the national and local economy, with permanent business closures being announced every day. It really can't be overstated the impact that the virus and the protective measures we're having to put in place to slow the disease is causing on our local economy and many of our small business owners. In response to that, over the last couple of weeks, Congress passed a fourth federal stimulus bill for an additional $484 billion. And this additional round of funding was really focused on refunding a number of the programs that were targeted at assisting local businesses that are struggling under these broad closures. Specifically, the Paycheck Protection Program, also known as PPP, quickly ran out of funds when it first went live about a month ago. And so a large chunk of that $484 billion went towards refunding that program, and applications reopened just yesterday. I had a conversation with Santa Cruz County Bank, and they were ramped up, ready to go with additional staffing and a more robust website as well, making sure that folks have access to completing those applications. The League of California Cities completed a statewide survey over the last few weeks, trying to get an idea of what cities anticipate as being their loss of revenues due to this crisis, really with the largest losses coming from sales tax and TOT tax. The results of that yielded an estimate of about $7 billion that they are estimating statewide, really creating a direct impact on local cities like Watsonville, as we continue to strive to provide essential services and frontline employees and protect the health and public safety of our community. The Monterey Bay region, working with other cities, we were able to put together some estimates of what we anticipate this impact to be throughout our region. For the balance of this fiscal year, we're estimating about a $40 million hit, and for next year, around $122 million just in sales and TOT tax alone, not reflective of loss of department fees and revenues as we see demand for service declining. We also just this morning received updated numbers from the Workforce Investment Board here in Santa Cruz County, and they are now showing about 20,000 unemployment claims just in the last 4 weeks, and that's specific just to Santa Cruz County. So as we all know, there's a lot of robust discussions happening across the country about when and how areas of the country can start to reopen. It's clear that it will happen slowly and in phases. And last week, the White House COVID-19 team, along with the CDC, released some national guidelines around how they propose to start moving towards state and regional reopening. And it's really based on three key areas. And I thought this would be helpful for the council's benefit and for the community as we all grapple with what the future response looks like. The first being around symptoms. So wanting to achieve a downward trajectory of influenza-like illness reported within a 14-day period. Also a downward trajectory of COVID-like syndrome cases reported within a 14-day period. When it comes to cases, they're wanting to see a downward trajectory of documented cases within, again, a 14-day period, or a downward trajectory of positive tests as a percent of total tests within a 14-day period. So again, a flat or increasing volume of testing. And in terms of hospital readiness, being able to treat all patients without crisis care, and a robust testing program in place for at-risk healthcare workers, including emerging antibody testing. So what this means at the local level, Santa Cruz County Public Health has put together a series of 4 phases that they are dubbing Santa Cruz County Save Lives. And that stands for Slow the Spread, which is phase 1, Adapt to the New Normal, phase 2, moving towards vaccination for phase 3, and then elevating our level of readiness as we look to the future responses to this pandemic and others. I wanted to highlight some of the details of what phase 1 would look like. So this includes physical distancing measures, as all of us are becoming very aware of, expanding public health testing, case investigation, contact tracing, isolation and quarantine support capacities. And this is really the core of public health focus right now, is really trying to ramp up on our ability to complete, significantly increase our capacity for testing, and to significantly increase our ability to aggressively track and trace contacts that may occur. This is really one of probably the biggest hurdles that needs to be achieved before a wider and broader reopening can occur, both here locally and throughout the country. And then lastly, it would be expanding healthcare bed capacity and personal preparedness equipment availability. So we've heard a lot about expanding bed capacity. We've heard a lot about the constraints we have around PPE. Those constraints are still true today, in addition to the constraints we have around our testing capacity. And so those are really the focus. Those need to be achieved before we can start moving towards a broader reopening. And partly have to do with why this phased approach of reopening is being proposed. So just over the weekend, we were contacted by the California Department of Public Health, along with the California Office of Emergency Services and our local county emergency operations center team, as the state works on trying to expand 80 new testing sites throughout the state of California. As part of that effort, they've identified a number of counties, including counties within the Central Coast region, that they believe are suitable and good candidates for testing facilities. Santa Cruz County was on that list, and as we began exploring suitable sites, one of the facilities that moved to the top of the list was our community center out of Ramsey Park. So we made that recommendation over the weekend to the county EOC, and just over the last couple of days, our EOC team and our logistics section, which is over our facilities branch, have been in conversations with county HSA and public health, and are working towards exploring Ramsey as a regional testing site, with the possibility of it being open as soon as next week. And so we are working towards that, working with the state on that effort, and trying to do our part to really ramp up testing, emphasizing how critical that need is right now. So I mentioned this earlier, face coverings are now a county order. In our ongoing outreach efforts and education efforts, we've put together a number of materials that we have already started distributing to businesses and residents around how to best follow this order. And so again, it includes visiting any essential businesses, entering a grocery store, pharmacy, laundromat, and restaurant, conducting business through a car window or walk up to a counter, visiting a healthcare provider, riding on public transportation, riding on a rideshare taxi service, or volunteering in public. We've also received a lot of questions about how it applies towards when you are exercising outdoors. And I want to also make clear that the health order, while it does not require it, it does recommend wearing face coverings when exercising outdoors and continuing to maintain social distancing. So there may be areas where it's not as likely that you're going to be in situations where you're in close proximity to others, so that may not be as high of a risk area. But of course, we know that in town and on some parts of our levee system and our trail systems, they can get busy at times, and it's just important that folks plan for those, and if necessary, wear face coverings if they cannot maintain their social distancing. We've placed a major emphasis on outreach efforts, both in English and Spanish. At the onset of this emergency, we recognized that it was going to be critical that we get timely and relevant information out to our community on a regular basis. As part of those efforts, we have developed a COVID outreach and education team, and they are focused on a few areas now. We started with a focus on businesses, and they've been out to visit on site over 27 supermarkets in their efforts to help them ensure and implement social distancing protocols in their stores. And that includes, you can see in this picture here, handing out free floor decals for businesses that didn't have the ability to do so, and helping them institute measures to make sure that their customers are safe. We are currently, over the next couple of weeks, also working with banks, laundromats, hardware stores. These are all areas that have been identified as potential hotspots by community members. And again, our approach is wanting to provide education, support, and help folks reach voluntary compliance. And that's really been our focus. Over the past couple of weeks, there's been a lot of concern around farm worker safety and agricultural worker safety. So we are in the process now of making a major push, working with some of our large ag operators here in town, including Driscoll's and Lakeside Organics and the Farm Bureau, of putting together materials and an outreach team to actually go out to the fields and provide information, as well as provide services to our ag employers that they can then pass on to our farm workers. So we've been encouraged about some of the conversations that are happening at the state level around providing for some additional support. And we want to ensure that we are getting ahead of any potential problems that may arise, and make sure that our farm workers in town are being protected. And of course, the census is still ongoing. And even though we're in this health crisis, we want to make sure that we continue to place a major focus on making members of our community counted. Being in the midst of this crisis, it really underscores how important every member of our community is to be counted. And much of the federal stimulus funding that is currently coming out to communities is based on census counts. It's based on per capita populations. And when we don't get an accurate and thorough count of all of our community members, it really affects the resources that come into our community. So we continue to put a major push in that area as well. And as I've mentioned on past updates, our employees are supporting regional efforts as disaster service workers, in addition to the significant work they're already doing as a part of their essential services. And that, from our firefighters, police officers, our public works and utility divisions, our solid waste collection. We have many employees that continue to come into work every day to keep our operations moving, including our municipal airport. But in addition to that work, we have employees that are assisting with regional needs. That includes assisting the food bank with weekly drive-through food distribution. We just received a note from one of our food bank partners this morning stating that our employees have served over 250 hours now helping with those distribution sites. We're also providing employees 40 hours a week now, supporting the unemployment and disability application need that is out there. And just last week, we held our first eviction moratorium task force with a group of stakeholders, industry stakeholders, ranging from property managers to commercial and residential landlords to tenant advocates. And it was a really robust discussion about the eviction moratorium, what's really happening in our community when it comes to individuals being able to pay rent, how many of our responsible landlords are working with their tenants to work through and troubleshoot issues. And really it was just a strong spirit of cooperation and wanting to really support the community and look at how we can all continue to do that going forward. And then lastly, this was mentioned earlier, but our older adult services team and supervisor continue to provide support to the Project Elderly Care Program. That's really just doing incredible work in our community, reaching out, connecting with our seniors, making sure they have the supplies they need, the food that they need, and also just giving them someone to talk to during this tough time. In terms of homeless efforts, the Vets Hall is now up and running, has a capacity for up to 60 people. Major investment in the facility there, including new permanent showers, a new HVAC system. We're also in the process now of working with the county to set up a homeless outreach site at River Park, which would include mobile showers and sanitizing stations for those that just don't have access to the current temporary shelters we have. This would give them an outlet to ensure that they at least have access to clean water and shower facilities. So that's a summary of our update. Obviously, there's a lot underway, but I will stop there. I want to again thank the council for your leadership. I want to thank our employees for really going above and beyond in many different ways, and just gratitude for the way our community is stepping up to continue meeting community needs during this crisis.
Okay, so this is a time for council clarifying and technical questions. Are there any questions? Just raise your hand. Yeah, Trina, and then Aurelio. Go ahead, Trina.
Thank you. With Ramsey Park and the facility, are they staffing from our resources, or are they bringing staffing into our community for the testing facility?
So we have not discussed staffing yet. I would imagine it'll end up being a combination of county health, as well as a potential for us to provide some disaster service workers. Again, these will largely be medical operations. And so as we get more information about how they intend to staff and what support they may need, I'll bring more updates back to the council.
The mobile showers, I know that there was an issue with making sure that we had enough showers in the sanitation. Are we doing any screening or healthcare just to see if anybody is a concern that maybe they feel like they've got something, just because they go in and use the shower, they need to be cleaned up so that they don't contaminate the shower for the next person going in it. So is there going to be any screening process to make sure that we're keeping the community safe that need those extra resources?
I know that the county has admitted that their focus over the last few weeks has really been ramping up on getting the support network in place, getting the facilities up and running, and putting a game plan together as to how they're going to conduct outreach. So they have started those conversations now. In fact, I know that they've been working with the Community Action Board's homeless outreach team as well. And they're putting protocols together as to how they're going to start going out and making contact with homeless individuals in the community. That'll all be part of that screening work as well. So I'd kind of treat that as being phase 2 of this effort. Phase 1 was getting the facilities up and running, and now they'll start putting more effort and energy into outreach.
And the last question that I have for you is the mask resources. Now that it's required, will we have the capability of people to be able to pick a mask up if they need them? Because I know that they're for sale, but not everybody has the capability of doing the purchase. So if there's a resource there so that we can send them if they need to get a mask, or how accessible they could be for the public that may need them and don't have the means of getting them.
Yeah, so there is a regional effort underway to set up regional mask distribution sites and drop-off sites as well for folks that may have extra face coverings on hand. So we are working to establish a drop-off location here in Watsonville. There are also a lot of local vendors that are now producing masks. And so when it comes to city operations, we have reached out to many of them and we have purchased face coverings for our own employees and ensured that they all have access to face coverings as they're going about their work where appropriate. And of course, our public safety, given the situations that they're put in, also have access to N95 masks as they need. But yes, we are working on a regional effort to try to make masks available for those that may not be able to access them.
Okay, thank you. Aurelio?
Trina covered everything.
Oh, okay. Are there any other questions? Francisco? And then Mark.
Matt, could you just explain the testing site a little bit more? Like, who will be brought there, or will it be like kind of like shut off, closed off to the public, and people will be brought in to be tested, or how will that work?
So we don't have a lot of details on the testing sites yet, I'll admit. They have shared with us what their site requirements are, and the site requirements have very strict standards as to how people are to flow through the facility. There's only one entrance, one exit. They need a physical building that they can operate out of. They need ample space for car volumes to come through the site. And so what I can tell you based on what they've shared so far is that these will be closely monitored, highly regulated facilities with the goal of really ramping up the state's target of increasing testing across the state of California. And so as they're looking at potential locations, I think part of the reason why they selected Santa Cruz County and specifically Watsonville is that it would have access for both Monterey County and Santa Cruz County residents, and it would be serving as a regional testing site.
Okay. And not to replace what the current CDC guidelines are or anything, but will having a testing site here in Watsonville maybe allow us or help us gradually reopen compared to maybe other communities that don't have these testing sites?
Well, I can tell you that Dr. Newell, our county health official, as well as the governor's team and the CDC have all made very clear that any decisions around reopening can only happen based on data. And the data they need, they can only gather if we're doing much more robust testing. So I think by extension, yes, having access to testing in our region will absolutely benefit us in being able to make more informed decisions and take a more targeted approach. Right now, with absent that, we have these broad shelter-in-place orders that are having this significant impact that we're all very familiar with. And so the goal is to be able to move to a more contact tracing, more targeted approach, but they can only do that if they have more robust testing data. And that's what these facilities are intended to accomplish.
And I imagine that the testing kits, the volume won't be there, right? We'll probably start off slow, I imagine.
I don't know what the testing kit volumes look like. Okay. I do know that the state has set the goal of having 80 new testing sites set up in the next week. It's a very ambitious goal, but I would imagine it will take time to ramp up to that.
Okay. Do you have a sense, thank you for that, do you have a sense of how many businesses have already closed down in Watsonville because of COVID-19?
We don't have an exact count, but it's very safe to say that the vast majority of our businesses are not able to operate under the shelter-at-home order. Watsonville is unique in some ways that we have a number of industries that are considered essential. Obviously, many of those connected with the ag industry, and so all of those operations continue to operate. And a number of our warehousing and light industrial type of uses are also considered essential, so they're still up and operating. So I would say that we probably have more than most, but the majority of our businesses are certainly suffering under these closures.
Okay, thank you. Just one last question, Matt. Is there any way to sort of keep masks affordable, like maybe have a price across the board for maybe the cloth ones, or something that, you know, I was just sort of thinking of what Trina was saying, just to make them affordable to people. I don't know, just a thought. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Francisco. Ari?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Okay, a couple questions. I'll continue with the testing side. So do we have a turnaround time? Do they have that where the test site will, if you come in to take a test, when will you get that information back? Whether you have, whether you're positive or not, whether you have antibodies. I don't know what kind of testing it's going to be.
They have not shared those details yet, and how fast the turnaround time will be. I can share with you that right now, even before this testing site has been set up, they are starting to turn tests around as quickly as the same day, which is significantly improved from where it was when we first started. So they are making some improvements. I'm not sure for these larger testing facilities what that will look like.
So have they talked about what kind of testing it's going to be? Whether it's going to be antibody testing or whether it's just going to be whether you are positive for the virus?
They have not shared those details either.
Okay. If are we going to have any locations for hand sanitizers or any other resources that we're going to be able to share with the community?
We are working towards that. As I mentioned on one of my previous updates, there's a number of companies here in town that are now manufacturing sanitizing materials. And so as they start ramping up and have more of that product available, we'll be exploring options of how we can make that available to the public. I can tell you that some of the companies like Smith and Vanderveer and Bloom are selling it at a very low cost to the public, and it's already made its way to a number of our local markets. So they've been very intentional about making sure that those products are accessible from a financial standpoint. And when it comes to face coverings, we will be working with our county partners of ways where we can both collect and help distribute masks, make those available to the public as well.
Okay. I guess we've talked about businesses as well, but then we talk about city staff and having to deal with making sure, layoffs touch as few people as possible. Is that something that we've already started to discuss with staff?
We have started having discussions as we look at right-sizing our budget in the midst of this the fiscal crisis that this health crisis is causing. I continue to keep my commitment of trying to minimize making permanent changes based on temporary circumstances. The tough part, of course, is just not knowing how temporary any of this is. And so where there may need to be some limited reductions, we're doing that based on where we've seen a significant drop in demand for services and where we can anticipate that drop in services will be in place for the foreseeable future. And that's true of both services and the connected revenues to those services as well. But we're exploring a multifaceted approach that'll also include bringing a proposal to the council of using some of our emergency reserves to try to offset that impact as well.
Okay, another comment or question about the senior councils that we have. We're doing our age-friendly communities. And I see this as something that has come out of the COVID-19 issues that Watsonville, and I want to compliment you, Matt, also because as Mayor Garcia said, she was asked on KSCO and it was complimented to her that Watsonville was in the forefront. And I want to say thank you, too, for your planning and staff's planning to get us out there and bring that to our attention as quickly as possible early on. So that's a big kudo. Thank you. But when it comes to the age-friendly, the county has decided now to take leadership on this. And I know Watsonville, we were very active in moving this forward right at the beginning. And I guess I know Councilman Hurst feels the same way I do. This is a little bit concerning. And how are we going to go about having this discussion rather than just a top-down, we're taking it over and it's our thing now from the county?
Yeah, so of course, my concern is wanting to ensure that our unique needs in Watsonville and our older adults that need programming that's specific to our community remains the priority. And so the county has just recently expressed interest of wanting to have a larger role. As you pointed out, Councilmember Parker, Watsonville was one of the first cities in the region to officially sign on to the age-friendly policy commitment, and that commitment remains. And so we have every intention of being very involved in the future of the program. And as the council all know, we've made a major investment in our older adult services program over the last year, and we plan on continuing that as we go forward.
Okay, so we'll continue to have discussion with that. Thank you very much, Matt.
Yes.
Thank you, Ari. Aurelio and then Lowell.
Question. Why wasn't the Watsonville Hospital included or in the site for testing?
So we're getting this, of course, secondhand because the information flows through the county EOC, and they're in conversations directly with the California Office of Emergency Services. What they shared with us was that they did work with hospital management to explore the feasibility of Watsonville Community Hospital as a candidate site. Again, they have very strict site requirements, and they weren't able to check a couple of the boxes. They didn't share specifically where it fell short, but that was their first choice. That's where that was the first site that they pursued. And for one reason or another, it fell short of their site criteria. That's when they reached out to us to explore other opportunities. The other piece of this too, again, they've got a very short timeline. So they're trying to get these facilities opened as early as Monday of next week. And so they really just didn't have a lot of time to continue trying to get a site working if they felt that it wasn't going to meet their requirements.
Now, is this going to be the only one in Santa Cruz County? Testing site?
They've not shared whether or not this will be one of multiple sites in Santa Cruz County. I believe right now, this will obviously be the only site in South County, but I'm not sure about North County.
And just so my fellow councilmen know also, the CAB and other organizations, other nonprofits have been creating masks for the most needy, especially the Cultural Center, the Madre Rosa, the Nun Rosa in Pajaro. My neighbor just done over 300 of them, and they're making sure that they get out to the most needy people.
Yeah, there are a lot of organizations that have stepped up and are now producing masks. We've purchased some of those face coverings even for our city employees. So we're going to continue to work to get the word out to community members about where they can access them.
Okay, Lowell.
I just want to make sure that Matt and all the staff knows the community's appreciation and the hard work that's going on in these very difficult and stressful times. You know, there's a lot of economic pressures, a whole bunch of social pressures, but I think staff is holding up really well, and I just want to make sure that that compliment goes through the chain of command. Thank you.
Thank you, Lowell. I have one question, Matt. In your presentation, you talked about having all materials in English and Spanish. However, I also saw some materials in Mixteco, which is the primary language of many of our farm workers from Oaxaca. And so to what extent are we going to continue adding Mixteco?
Thank you, Mayor Garcia, for mentioning that. So we have been trying to expand that outreach as we get opportunities, and you're correct that we just produced some materials that we're going to be handing out as part of our farm worker outreach as well. That was in Mixteco in addition to Spanish. So we'll continue to do that, and we're taking a targeted approach as we do our outreach and making sure that as we're touching on topics that we think would have a broader reach, expanding what languages we're pushing that information out with.
Very, very good. Okay, this is an opportunity for the public to give input. Is there any public input on this presentation?
Give me one moment, please. Hold on, please. Go ahead. Go ahead, Steve.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Okay, for my question, number one, Governor Newsom said in his address a few days ago that 19 counties had been contacted through or contacted to ask if the Motel 6 would be allowing we have one in our city. Is the home, are the homeless going to be able to access Motel 6 off the Highway 1 freeway?
The county is securing many hotel rooms across different parts of the county, both in Santa Cruz and now here in Watsonville, for housing homeless as well as frontline employees that may be exposed in the course of their work. So, yes, that is all part of the comprehensive approach they're taking to secure as many rooms as possible. They've also been in conversations with the Comfort Inn here in town as well as being another hotel option. My team has been in conversations with many of the hotel owners as well to see if some may be potentially access for farm worker housing as well, both for those that are healthy and for those that may be exposed in the course of their work.
Great. Okay, part two, there's a major hotel that was supposed to be opening this summer. I don't know if that project's been abandoned or delayed or what, but will it open sometime this year, next year? And has the city considered putting the DOT on the ballot for November to raise the transit occupancy tax?
The hotel you're referencing is the Hampton Inn off Lee Road. It had the temporary halt construction because of the shelter-in-place order. It was not considered an essential operation. However, that may be changing later this week as they ease some of the restrictions. They're still on target to open within the end of this calendar year, assuming that they can restart construction in the near future. There are no plans at this time to consider an increase to Watsonville's TOT.
Okay, and my next question, I'll be giving my last question is, the city library is closed. Will it reopen anytime soon? The city librarian is scheduled to retire, or so she has told us. I'm on the Friends of the Library June 1st. What will become of her position? Thank you.
Steve is mentioning Carol Heitzig, our wonderful library director, who has plans of retiring in the not too distant future. So we're working with her in the department around future staffing for the department and a transition plan.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Are there any other public comments on this presentation?
Sure. Any other members of the public that would like to ask the question right now?
Can you hear me? Is it possible?
Yeah, we can hear you. Can you say your name for the record, please?
I'm trying to figure out where my mic is here. Turn it up.
Yeah, we can hear you. You just need to say your name for the record.
Sorry, yes.
You have 3 minutes.
So, two things. One was that because we had lots of plans for the open streets and the improvements for cycling, I don't know if that's going to be delayed because of what's happening economically for us. As you can all see, there's been a huge swelling of cycles on the street now. Luckily, we're not hearing about more accidents because there's a lot fewer cars. But people are really beginning to get more involved in getting more habits, using bikes, exercise, and to enjoy it with their kids. So I guess my question is, if we're not going to be able to get those programs rolling out as far as more areas to bike in, what would be the proposals for that in lieu of delays with
with those. And the second thing was just both at the levee and at the slough. I know Paco's mentioned this, but I would see it as being mandatory for people to wear masks because they really are very close to each other. And I see this all the time. I'd say 95% of people are not wearing masks, and that really scares me. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Jim.
Any other comments from the public?
I think none.
Okay, then Matt, thank you very much for your presentation. Very informative. We're going to move on now to consent agenda. This is time for public input on any consent agenda item. Is there anybody that would like to address publicly our consent agenda? Hearing none, then I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Aurelio and a second by Trina. Any comments, discussions on the consent agenda? Francisco?
Thank you, Mayor. This question is for Director Williams. The $69,000 for the airport, what kind of activities will you be able to fund with the $69,000? Thank you.
Rayan, are you there, Rayan?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry about that. The $69,000 comes with strings attached. It comes in the option of 3 different types of uses. The primary use and the most efficient use is payroll and utility bills for the airport. So what we're going to do is we're going to work with work with Cindy, because what we're looking to do is improve our cash flows. And so we're going to use the $69,000 to cover our payroll for this period in time. If we were to use it for other opportunities, such as our planned fuel island, we'd have to go through many more hoops. So this allows us a chance to save some money, make a payroll impact immediately, and we should have the funds probably before the end of the month.
Are there any other questions? Yes, Aurelio?
Could Matt address just item F, consideration of city volunteer time?
You want Matt to address that?
Yeah, could he address that briefly?
Okay, Matt, did you hear the question regarding F?
I did. I'm trying to come back online here. Item F is referring to our voluntary time off program, or VTO. It's a program that we've had in place now for several years as a cost saving measure. Under the circumstances, as I mentioned earlier, as we explore ways to reduce costs, operational costs, this is one of the programs that allows some staff to reduce the amount of time they're working each week unpaid. So it results in a cost savings to the city and also provides some flexibility in scheduling at the discretion of each of the department directors.
Does that answer your question, Aurelio?
Natalie pop up. I was wondering if she wanted to chime in.
And Natalie may want to add some more details.
I think Matt covered it.
Okay, thank you, Natalie. Francisco?
On that same topic, Matt or Natalie, is there a balance? Is there we can't really, once we reach a certain amount, people can't really request this anymore without decreasing service levels? Or is this sort of, I know that they have to go through their supervisors and then they approved by the city manager, and they, but is there a limit to how many people can be offered this without really affecting service levels?
I think that, again, like you said, it would be something that would have to be approved by every department. And of course, we would have to weigh it whether or not that would impact the services that are provided. So I guess there could potentially be an impact if, all of our solid waste drivers wanted to retire tomorrow. We may not be able to do that, but I think we'd have to take it on a case-by-case basis.
Very good. So if there's no other questions, I ask for, oh, yeah, Aurelio, go ahead.
Now that Councilman Paco opened it up, on the volunteer time off, is there any penalties for excessive time off? Besides not
Any
getting paid?
penalties? I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
In other words, is there anybody that abuses, that if they tend to abuse the voluntary time off, is there any penalties for them, or is there any way to say you can't take the voluntary time off because you've already taken too much, or?
The way the voluntary program is set up is employees have to commit to a set schedule for up to 6 months. So they would have to say, okay, I'm planning on working 32 hours for the next 6 months. And so that becomes their regular schedule. So there really isn't a penalty as long as they commit to that.
It has to be scheduled, and it just can't say, I want these less hours this week.
Correct. We ask for a 6 month commitment for that reduced schedule.
All right, thanks.
It looks like Felipe had a question. Go ahead, Felipe.
Is there any criteria, like parents with kids in the school district that are not going to school, or kids that have, parents that have, kids in daycare, for example, that with both parents working, that have first dibs at that program, or some sort of criteria for it?
If I could speak to it really quick. So just for context, we only have about 10 employees that participate in the program organization-wide. It's important to remember, too, that folks that are making use of this are not getting paid for that time, right? So there is a financial impact, and really the intent of the program is to provide for some flexibility to our employees, many of whom that do take advantage of it are parents that have young children at home and are trying to balance home and work responsibilities. But the expectation is that we're doing that in ways that are not disruptive to our city operations. And again, this is at the discretion of the department director. So we were having areas where we, for different reasons, let's say we had a wave of retirements, we had a few employees get injured, and we couldn't afford to have an employee elect to have a reduced work week, and we needed them in the office 40 hours, we would do so.
Okay, any further questions? Hearing none, we'll have roll call now. Beatrice?
Catherine Gomez,
Yes.
Estrada,
Yes.
Gonzalez,
Yes.
Hernandez,
Yes.
Hurst,
Yes.
Parker,
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes. Okay, a consent agenda has been adopted. We're moving on now to public hearings, ordinance and appeals. And this is a consideration approval of substantial amendment to the Community Development Block Grant Consolidated Plan Annual Action Plan for fiscal year 2019-2020. And it looks like Carlos is going to be presenting to us. You're on.
Thank you. Let me see if I can pull here my presentation. Can you see the presentation?
Not yet.
Okay. Let's see, do we have, can you see it?
No.
I am the new person. Okay, so here we go, share. You let me know when you, oh, there it is.
Not yet. Oh, there it is. Okay, yeah.
Okay, we got it, all right. Well, good afternoon, Mayor Garcia, members of the City Council, city staff, members of the public, Carlos Landaverri, the housing manager, presenting for your consideration the substantial amendments to the city's CDBG action plan for 2019-2020, which is part of the CDBG's 5-year consolidated plan. So by way of background, the City of Watsonville is an entitlement jurisdiction that receives federal funds from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development under the Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG. The CDBG program is designed to assist low and moderate income households. All right, okay. No, slide didn't go. Next slide, it didn't go. There it is. Having some technical difficulties here. All right, so HUD requires that all entitlement communities adopt a 5-year consolidated plan for their approval. The consolidated plan serves as a planning guide in determining how the city's allocation of CDBG's funds will be used over the 5-year period. That 5-year consolidated plan provides an assessment of the housing and community development needs, a strategic plan for addressing those needs, and an annual action plan that outlines how the CDBG funds will be used each year. So we are at the end of the city's 2015-2019 consolidated plan. It was submitted in 2015, approved by HUD in 2015. And so that consolidated plan and the activities proposed in the action plan should help achieve one of the community's long-term goals and priorities identified in our consolidated plan, and they must meet one of these 3 objectives. The proposed activities have to benefit low to moderate income persons or households. They must prevent or eliminate slum and blight, or they must serve an urgent community need, which is what we have now. So back in our current consolidated plan, the 2015-2019 plan, we identified in order of priority affordable housing, economic development, public services, and public facilities. Those activities are consistent with the City Council's strategic goals and the priority needs listed in the 5-year consolidated plan. And so, where do we go from here? Why the need to have a substantial amendment to our plan? We are at the end of our consolidated plan in our action plan, as I mentioned, but we now have a big emergency in our community, the coronavirus disease. We also have some extra funding that came our way that we can use for the existing action plan. As you know, on March 27th, Congress passed the CARES Act to support preparation for and response to the community impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. It also identified additional funding for the city of Wattsville through its CDBG program. So the difference between substantial amendments and a minor amendment to the plan, every time we have a 25% change in the amount allocated to any category of funding, that would be a substantial amendment. Also, if we propose to fund a new activity not previously described in the action plan, that would also be a substantial amendment. And so with the new CARES Act, there are some changes to the plan that we can make. There's additional funding. There are additional activities that we want to propose based on the additional funding. On April 9th, HUD issued guidance that waives the citizen participation plan requirement for entitlement jurisdictions, that allows us to do a 5-year public comment period instead of 30 days. It also lifts or eliminates the cap on public services from 15%. We now have no limit. And so based on that, we thought that we still have 2 months left on this plan. Why not try to amend it and try to get that money out to our residents in order to try to treat our new emergency. And so what does that mean for us? So the supplemental CDBG funds, we anticipate receiving an additional $443,984. In addition, we're also proposing to reallocate up to $100,000 of available unused funds from our 2019 allocation in order to combat this crisis. And so how are we proposing to do that? Well, it's taken a lot of work in the past couple of weeks, and before I proceed, I would like to thank all the city staff that have helped us to get to where we are right now, specifically the city manager's office, city clerk's office, the city attorney's office, the finance department staff, and others, specifically the CDD department, our clerical staff. We've been doing a lot of work to get to where we are right now with this proposal. So with this new funding, we recommend that the supplemental CDBG funds be allocated for the following new and continuing activities, all of which are consistent with the CARES Act in response to the community impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Funding is also used for costs associated with the administration of the CDBG program. We're proposing a new activity, a new emergency housing assistance program, up to $100,000, a food distribution program for $200,000, a micro or small business assistance program to help our small businesses in the area. And that would be an increase of $130,000 for economic development, program administration for $88,000, and a new activity to expand internet access to households that have students K through 12 that need to take classes online but don't have internet access. And so, but I must remind you that we want to do all of this for the next 2 months. As I said, our consolidated plan and our action plan end on June 30th. And so we would have 2 months to get this money out as much as we can. We know that the need is out there, specifically for the food distribution programs. I don't have to talk much about it. You see the people, the lines out there trying to get food. But after July 1st, we need to work and bring to council our next 5-year plan, the 2020-2024 consolidated plan. With that, we also have to include the 2020-2021 action plan. The good news is that we expect some additional CDBG funding to combat the COVID-19 pandemic that may be available in the next couple of months. We already received an allocation for next year. And so whatever monies we don't spend in this action plan, we'll roll it over to next year. So whatever new money we receive, we'll also be able to include it in next year's action plan. And so with that, we recommend that following a public hearing, that you adopt a resolution to approve the substantial amendments to the 2015-2019 consolidated plan, the 2019-2020 action plan as proposed, and that you authorize the city manager to complete the amendments and submit those to HUD for their approval. Thank you very much. With that, I will end my presentation and I'll be available to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Thank you, Carlos, for that presentation. So it's now time for council members to ask clarifying or technical questions. Who would like to ask questions? No one? Well, I have several questions, okay? My first question is, as mentioned by Matt earlier, the senior center is utilizing the elderly care project so that now many of our seniors are receiving groceries delivered at their home. Why were they not considered in terms of the food distribution?
Well, we don't have, so we reached out to a few nonprofits. And the way we see this is more of a pilot program. In order to utilize CDBG funds, we have to make sure that the new funding that we get that is used specifically for a particular activity that doesn't compete or doesn't have any funding from the federal government. In other words, we cannot do double dipping. We cannot duplicate the benefits. But that being said, we did reach out to a few nonprofits. The ones that we are proposing are the ones that have been willing and have the capacity to work with us so that we can roll this money out as quickly as possible. But that doesn't mean that going forward or for the next action plan that we can work with other nonprofits, and by then we'll see the real needs out there.
Well,
I don't know if that-
as I said, our senior center, our seniors are using this service, and the group, and it's just volunteers basically. They get nothing from the federal government. They're just getting donations, financial donations for the community. They're getting donations from stores and businesses. And so they need as much help as we can. So I just want to point that out. My next question is, I see that the small business assistance is being given to Alpajaro CDC. And granted, they're just new businesses basically just starting off. But I have spoken to many long-term small businesses who are struggling not to close, even with the CARES Act loan. How are we going to be able to help them?
Very good question. Thank you for that question, Mayor Garcia. So with your approval today, then we can start working with Alpajaro CDC. They have expressed the capacity and an interest to help us roll out the program. So we don't have any details on the program, but one thing that I can tell you is that, again, back to the double dipping, that small businesses in the area that haven't qualified, haven't applied, or have been denied from the SBA or the PPP program or the latest Congress passed program, they will be able to access some of our assistance. And although we don't have all the details on how that would work out, the idea is to help small businesses in Watsonville with financial assistance, and it could be maybe rent, maybe utilities, and if they use it for rent, then that money can go directly to their landlord on their behalf. But as I said, we don't have the details yet.
And Mayor Garcia, if I may add to that, you had mentioned business startups, and it's true that El Pajaro CDC is known for really placing an emphasis on helping businesses open, but they also provide a range of business support services for existing businesses. And so the goal of this funding is to help fill that gap for our local businesses that have not been able to access the SBA disaster relief funding under the stimulus package or the TTP, and provide another option to give them some economic support during these challenging times, given that many of our folks were or had challenges accessing some of the stimulus funding. So this is one more effort to try to get money out to our businesses that need it as quickly as possible.
Well, for example, one of the owners I spoke to of small business has cleaners, and he says the only funding that they're getting in terms of, or business that they're getting, is from our police officers and our fire department. And he says that's not enough. And he applied for the loan, was denied, but he thinks he's going to get a loan now. However, what he said is, even with a loan, it may not be enough for him to survive. And so there are businesses out there, and I know I've talked to cafes and restaurants who actually have closed. And so, they've been long-term businesses. And I've heard of other cities giving like a small amount of grants to these long-term businesses. So I just want to make sure that, yes, we need to support CDC, and they're doing great work, and in terms of startup businesses, and some that have been around for 2 or 3 years also. But we have other businesses, and I just want to make sure that if we're able to try to support them as much as we can.
Mayor, if I may follow up on those comments, because I want to make this very clear. So El Pajaro CDC will be serving as the grant administrator, but these are small business grants, and they will be available to all businesses in the community. And so, yes, the funds are being received by El Pajaro CDC, but they will be passing these funds on to local businesses to help them during these challenges.
So it's not going to be just for their clients?
Correct.
Okay, good. Oh, I'm glad to hear that. Okay. My next question is, in terms of the expanded internet access, if I understood correctly, it's to help students who may not have access. But my understanding from the superintendent, or hearing the superintendent speak, she is saying that all their students, one, now have equipment, and two, I forgot the number of hotspots. She said that they were going to be able to also give, so that everybody, all students, are served. And so can you just explain more how this extra $25,000 is going to help the school district?
Sure. So we continue to hear in this virtual world that we're now living in that we still have community members that are having challenges accessing broadband. And it's true that the school district has been doing a lot of great work around that and giving access to a number of families that didn't have it otherwise. But we still believe the need exists. And so this is really seed money, and we're going to be working with other organizations in the area that have expressed interest in also contributing financially to just build on that work the school district's doing and make sure that all members of our community have access to the internet that need it.
Okay, thank you. My final question has to, if I understood correctly, public had 5 days period for public input. And so I want to know what did the outreach to the community to inform them of this look like? How did our community know that they could give input during those 5 days?
So our usual method is we reach out to all of our nonprofits because they work directly with our community.
Okay.
But we also use all the social media, internet. What CDBG requires is that we actually publish a notice in a local paper. So we publish the notices on Thursday and Friday. And so from that to today, that would be the 5-day period. But we actually started the week before so that we could engage the community and see what we could get. And along those lines, we had been working already with the community or nonprofits so that we could work on the next consolidated plan. So having all of those contacts, we went to them and so that we could touch on these amendments so that we could give them enough time for them to respond, to let us know how we are doing. So for example, the internet access came during that period. It came, I believe it was the end of last week or the week before. But in talking to the community and our nonprofits, food distribution was identified as one of the biggest needs, and then the assistance to our renters and to our small businesses.
Okay, thank you very much. So those were my questions. Are there any other questions from council members? Francisco.
Thank you, Mayor. Carlos, thank you for the presentation. My question was about determining need and priority. Are we co-creating criteria with TAB and El Paro CDC and these other organizations that will help us distribute the money, or will we leave it up to them to sort of figure out how to best use the funds?
Yeah, thank you for your question, Councilmember Estrada. We are establishing priorities. I can tell you we've been looking at CAB for the housing emergency housing assistance program, because they already have an emergency housing rental program, and they already have some priorities. But in talking to our city manager's office, we're in dealing with the community and the needs, real needs out there right now. We are looking at the following priorities to include under that program. Priorities to farm workers, priorities to, I have them here written down. I will read them to you if you give me here just 1 second. There we go. So essential workers, farm workers, victims of domestic violence, families with children, single people with disabilities, single people 60 years of age or older. The way we envision the program is to include a payment for rent that would go directly to the landlord. We're also including paying for hotel or motel stays for emergency housing assistance. These funds can also be utilized for our essential workers that need to self-isolate in a hotel due to exposure to COVID-19 in the course of fulfilling their essential duties. So the work, we're partnering with our nonprofits, but the city will be doing a lot of this work. We will be monitoring how their money is spent, and I don't know if our city manager would like to add so much to that.
Yeah, as Carlos mentioned, Councilmember Estrada, so this will be a partnered program. So we will be working jointly to develop the program criteria, working closely with both El Pajaro CDC and CAB as a partnership effort. And I also wanted to note, because I think this is important, on the emergency housing assistance program, this would be an expansion of the existing infrastructure that CAB already has in place, so it allows us to move quickly. And the funding would go directly to landlords or, in the case of a hotel stay, to the hotel owner as well. So there will be strong monitoring and controls of the funds to make sure that they're going to where they were intended.
Will we have like a cross collaboration with like our website and stuff like that, so that people can, if they go to the city website, you know, the CAB link will be there and it'll send them to get that information?
Yes, we'll be collaborating on the outreach efforts as well, and also making sure all the information is easy to find on our website.
Okay. Will we incur any debt? Will we have to pay anything back?
Not with this funding.
Excellent. And then so you said that this is just until the end of the fiscal year. Do we sort of are we hoping that we'll get the same level of funding starting the next fiscal year to help people, or maybe a little bit more? What's your sense of the situation right now, Carlos?
I anticipate about the same. So we already heard that for the regular CDBG allocation, we're anticipating $754,000. We anticipate some more funding under the CDBG coronavirus funding. And whatever monies we don't spend under the current plan, we get to roll that over to the next year. So I anticipate about the same.
Those are my questions. Thank you, all of you. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, Aurelio, did you have something?
No, I just wanted to make sure that it was clarified that the nonprofits are going to make sure that the money gets distributed equitably within our community, and those other profit organizations like the Elderly Care have that same opportunity to go and apply for those.
Okay, thank you, Aurelio. Trina.
So thank you. What we've got here to confirm, we're spending $543,000 in the next 60 days. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And when we were giving the food bank the 200,000, that's 800,000 meals, according to Food Bank. What has been their need in terms of the volume that they've been distributing versus the 200,000 additional for the other 800,000 meals? Because I know that they're getting funding from sources. Can you tell me a little bit about, that seems to be quite an excessive number for 800,000 meals for the next 60 days.
Well, it's a little more than 60 days, and thank you for your question, Councilwoman Kaufman Gomez. So the Food Bank has reported an increase of 70% from last month to now, increased 70% in their food distribution. And so the money, if you approve this, the supplemental or the substantial amendments today, that money can be used retroactively to when the crisis started. And so we can reimburse them for food distribution for expenses that we incurred last month, this month, May and June. So that would be about 4 months. And we, well, for now we have seen an increase of 70%. We don't know what may happen in the next weeks, in the next couple of months, but we anticipated that the need will be there for quite some time.
So 70% of what number? What number of meals are we actually, does that quantitate to? I don't know, relative to, we're serving 15,000 and that's gone up by 70%. Do we have a number that quantitates what 70% is related to?
No, I don't have any numbers. I believe I understand really may be available, and as you open the public hearing, you may be able to speak to that.
Councilmember Councilmember Kaufman Gomez. Willie Elliott McRae, the food bank CEO, shared that number with me at last week's board meeting. If you give me a few minutes, I can pull up that information and we can circle back on it.
Yeah, that would be very helpful for the community to know how many meals we're actually serving and where the money is going on that volume, because it is increased significantly, and obviously we want to make sure that we cover that void. And it sounds like this is going retroactive. And the other balance of it too is 100,000 to Community Action Board. How many requests have there been for housing assistance or the voucher system, so that we're making sure that we're balancing the resources for what CAB needs to what Second Harvest Food Bank needs. Do we have any numbers from CAB?
So from CAB, what we have heard is that they are taking between 30 and 40 phone calls a day looking for assistance, and that varies at different levels. And so, but related to our city funding, we don't have anything. We haven't announced anything that the program is available because we couldn't do that before your approval. But they're getting between 30 and 40 phone calls a day, just requesting assistance.
Just for the housing shelter part of it, because I would.
On all of their levels, it includes housing and all of the other activities that they provide.
And so when this money gets allocated, we will get the numbers back on how many grants were given to the number of rental housing, the vouchers for the motel housing. Are we going to get some of these figures back so we know how best the funding is being utilized and which resources need more help?
Yes, that is correct. This is a pilot program. In the next couple of months, and after the eviction moratoriums are lifted and we see more real needs out there, we will be able to tell you how we distributed the money, how many people benefited, and how we can best utilize the funds for our next year actions plan in the next allocation.
So that money could be, for example, if somebody was short rent now, when this gets lifted, they go there and say, okay, I've been short the last 2 months of rent, this is what the request is, versus going in saying I'm not going to be able to make the payment on the first of the month, the next month. So it'll be used retroactively as well as these resources when under the current program.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Under the
and
go ahead.
Okay. And the other one too is you used 2019 unused funds. So we received 100,000 from that. What do we have from that unused balance now? And are we looking to consider having any of those additional funds that may become available towards the next series, the next cycle of request?
That is correct. So from the 2018-2019 action plan, we had a capital improvement that didn't go through because of insurance issues. And for this year, we have canceled that project. That was the HVAC capital improvement project at the youth center. And so we are proposing to reallocate that amount to use it now to combat the COVID-19 emergency. Going forward, whatever monies we don't use for the existing action plan, we will be able to roll those funds over to next year. But for, let's see, for the 2019-2020 action plan, the only capital improvements that we have on that plan is the City Plaza restrooms. And that project is moving forward, so we will be able to spend all of that money. But whatever monies we don't spend under the current plan, we will be able to roll it over to next year. And it'll come to you so that, and we will have the public comment process, the outreach, market analysis, community needs assessment. Based on that, we will be bringing a proposal to you for your final determination and approval.
And I have one last question for you, Matt. This is COVID money that we're coming in and supplementing what we have with the CDBG funds now. And we were not a city of over 500,000 on some of the federal stimulus funding. Are we going to see that open up to the smaller communities such as ours that could then supplement the funding resources that we need for this program and our CBDG funds?
So what I did not share in my update today when we talk about federal stimulus funding was that fourth round, we had all been hopeful that funding would include direct funding for local governments of 500,000 population or less, because that cities of our size across the nation were not included in the first 3 bills that were passed. And unfortunately, despite much debate in Congress and strong lobbying from the League of California Cities, we were once again not included in the fourth bill of funding for cities of that size. However, there were some encouraging remarks shared by Republican leadership, Democratic leadership, and the White House that there will be an additional bill with specific funding to meet that need. So we're hopeful that there's still an opportunity. We're still fighting hard, weighing in both at the state and federal level to continue to advocate for the significant need we all have to maintain essential operations during this disaster. Going back really quickly to your question about the food bank, so I was able to pull up the information that they shared with us last week in terms of their COVID-19 response efforts. So just from March through this quarter, they're showing an additional increase in cost above baseline of about $780,000 and an additional distribution of food of about 1.8 million pounds of food. So as Carlos had mentioned earlier, they've seen an increase of 80% over their baseline year over year, what they would expect during this time of year. So we really can't overstate how significant the need is right now in our community for food access. I think the food bank is doing fantastic work in partnership with many of the other organizations that have been discussed today as well. And we think it was important, and in our conversations with many of the community members, many of us just pointed us back to the food bank to say that that's where the need is, and that's reflected in this budget proposal today.
And I have just one final question. The final question is, are we doing a letter of support of all council to get to the feds to say we're a small community and we need to be seeing some of those funding that you've been allocating to the cities of over 500,000? Are we preparing something for us to support and send to our congressmen for the stimulus?
We have continued to weigh in on both federal and state bills as they move forward. We have already sent one letter to Congressman Panetta's office for federal advocacy that the mayor signed, but we will be doing additional letters as well that the council can all sign on to. I'm also working with my city manager colleagues around the Monterey Bay region to capture the fiscal impact to our region and sending a letter along with the League of California Cities to highlight our area as well. So yes, we'll continue to push on those advocacy efforts as we move forward.
Can you send those to us as well? I don't know that I've read them. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Aurelio, you had something?
Yeah, yes, I did. I just said it. A lot of information there. Question, some of this CDBG funding will help us to offset some of our general funds for administrative costs?
Yes, a little bit. So under the CDBG rules, we can use some of those funds to cover under the affordable housing. We have covered code enforcement related to housing in the CDBG precincts in our area. And under the public services, we have also covered some staff time for the youth center that serves the low-income, low-income residents youth in this area, in the downtown area. So indirectly, those CDBG funds are used to support the city's budget, but it doesn't go directly to the general fund. It's in a specific activity that the housing staff has to monitor, and it has to be geared towards as a public service for the youth center and for affordable housing under code enforcement.
Thank you, Carlos.
Okay, are there any other questions at this time for Carlos? Okay, this is a public hearing, and so do we have any public comments to be made?
Give me 1 second, please. We do have public comment, please. 1 second. Who would like to speak? Members of the public? Are there any members of the public that would like to speak at this time?
Yes, hello, this is Helen Ewan Story and Paz Padilla from the Community Action Board. Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Good afternoon, council members. We're grateful to be included in the CDBG grant amendment for rental assistance funding during this critical time. We have seen a 50% increase in calls for rental assistance since the COVID-19 crisis began. We are seeing a diverse quantum of farm workers, those who have lost income or employment, their reduction of hours at work, or those who are experiencing domestic violence and other stress. Calling in distress, needing assistance to pay rent during this challenging time. This funding is critically needed at this time and will ensure it's distributed toward the greatest need in the city in coordination with the city. We anticipate that we'll be able to serve approximately 50 households with this funding. We thank you for your leadership and partnership in dealing with this crisis and supporting housing stability in our community at this time. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Any other public comment?
Yes, Carmen, are you ready? Carmen, unmute your computer, please. Hold on 1 second. I think you do *6 on the phone.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, good evening, council members and staff. Carmen Arana here from El Pájaro Community Development Corporation. I want to thank everybody for all the amazing work that you're doing to support the most needed members of the community. For the efforts that have been put in assuring that there's access to information through various channels, and also for making an effort to present the information in diverse languages. That is very important to assure equitable access to resources. So today I have about bring to the attention of you and the public of the needs of the small businesses, and especially the smallest businesses in town, because we have an estimate that 75% of the businesses, local businesses in the region, have been forced to close. That means that people that are self-employed are receiving zero income, and those are the same businesses and business owners that are being excluded from the CARES Act for diverse reasons. And I want to confirm that El Pájaro CDC has the ability to support the CDBG program to make sure that we get some funds to the community within, the guidelines of CDBG programs, the national goals. We've been managing CDBG grants for over 20 years now, so we are confident in our ability to connect with the businesses. I want to also clarify that El Pájaro CDC does have administrators. For over 40 years, we've been working with other businesses, not just with startups. We, in fact, the CDC has always played a role when emergency comes. When the Pájaro Plus happened, the Pájaro CDC was instrumental in helping businesses access FEMA funding and loans. Right now, we're working with a number them access the SBA Prime support. So I thank you for the support, and I'm looking forward to working with the city and making sure that we bring more support for our business community. And we're working hard on doing the living. Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen. Any other public comment?
Yeah, 1 second, Mayor, please. Anybody else that would like to speak at this time? You need to unmute your phone. Okay, I think none.
Okay, I'll bring it back to the council. I'll now entertain a motion to adopt the recommended resolution. Radio?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to.
Well, Aurelio already made the motion. You want to second it, Felipe?
I'll second it.
Okay, so it's the motion been made by Aurelio, second by Felipe. Any other further discussion on this motion? Lowell?
Thank you, Mayor. You know, I think the public needs to hear that when we assist CAB and the federal CDC, as well as the food bank, we're helping the entire region, not just the 55,000 people that live in the 6 square miles of Watsonville. We're helping folks far and wide, and so we truly are a leader in bringing resources to the entire community and not just within the city of Watsonville. We don't need any thanks for that, but we do see the need extending far and wide. So I just bring that up as a point to consider when folks look to the Pajaro Valley and see who the real leaders are. Thank you.
Thank you, Lowell. Other comments or questions? Aurelio?
Yeah, just a little follow-up with Lowell saying, thank you, Mayor. You know, this is the pilot program, and we're hoping to assist more folks within our community and within our region. With hopefully with the funding that's going to come up to us with this CBG funds. So we really need to start thinking forward even more on how we can help our community and what are the guidelines that we're going to be setting forward into the future. So thank you, staff, City staff, for working so diligently on this in such a short time frame. I really appreciate it, and I, from my heart, thank you very much.
Thank you, Aurelio. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, we'll have a roll call.
Carmen Gomez,
Yes?
Estrada,
Yes.
Gonzalez,
Yes.
Hernandez,
Yes.
Hurst,
Yes.
Parker,
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes, motion passes. I'm excited about this. Okay. Moving on, we have an emergency item has been added to the agenda. All of you probably about 5 minutes before the meeting started received an email, which you probably didn't have an opportunity to read, in regards to the resolution being proposed. And so I will ask, turn it over to Alan, if you can tell us about this emergency item.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to kind of break this into two parts. You've asked that I read the resolution first, so it'll be in front of the council's minds and the public, since it hasn't been, it came in so recently, just a few hours ago, that the public probably hasn't had a chance to hear it either. And then I'm going to have Jackie speak to the issue of why we need to do it now, and then after, unless there's some objection, then we'll have a deliberation and consideration of the motion itself. So first of all, the motion, it's a resolution of the council of the city of Wattsville authorizing and directing the city manager on behalf of the city to submit an application for $200,000 grant to the Bay Area Council Foundation for the California Resilience Challenge, and if awarded, to negotiate, execute, submit all documents, including but not limited to applications, agreements, payment requests, and so on, which may be necessary for the city Green Infrastructure Implementation Climate Resilience Challenge Grant and appropriating such funds to the Special Grants Fund. Whereas on April 27th, the city was invited, so that's yesterday, to apply for a resilience grant, challenge grant, in the amount of $200,000. And whereas through this proposed grant, the city will identify the types of green infrastructure projects that will benefit the community through beautification, carbon sequestration, habitat connectivity, improved air and water quality. And whereas the Bay Area Council Foundation requires the city council to adopt a resolution authorizing submitting an application for resilience challenge grant. Now therefore be it resolved by the city council as follows: that the city manager is hereby authorized and directed to submit an application for a resilience challenge grant from the Bay Area Council Foundation in the amount not to exceed $200,000. That the city manager is hereby authorized and empowered to conduct all negotiations, execute and submit on behalf of the city of Watsonville all documents, including but not limited to applications, agreements, amendments, payment requests, and so on, which may be necessary for the city of Watsonville Green Infrastructure Implementation Climate Resilience Challenge Grant. That the city manager of the city of Watsonville is hereby authorized and directed, if said grant is awarded, to appropriate such funds to the Special Grants Fund. This application is so new, it does not even have an acronym yet.
Okay, with that, can we turn it over to Jackie now then? We'll turn it over to Jackie so we can have
if I may, I want to set the stage for the higher voting requirements here, which is a technical legal issue. And then Jackie will speak to the substance of it, if that's okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so as you know, typically your items are on a agenda that's published 72 hours before the meeting, made available to the internet, and there are 3 exceptions to that. And I will say that in the last 30 to 60 days, we've had a couple of those exceptions, which in my longevity here at the city have never existed before. The last time I can remember anything like this was the earthquake. There are 3 exceptions. One of them is if there's a majority vote of the legislative body, then an emergency situation exists, and the emergency situation has to be one defined in a certain provision in the government code. The second alternative, and the one we are relying upon here to place this in front of you, is a determination by 2/3, so that's 5 of you, that there is, 1, a need to take immediate action, which Jackie will speak to, and 2, that the need for action came to the attention of the agency after the agenda was posted last Friday. And the third option is one we just had a few weeks ago, and that's the, we're not relying on tonight. That was the eviction moratorium, where we had an adjourned meeting where we came back on a Monday after a Friday meeting. So with that in mind, I'd like Jackie to speak just first of all to the issue of why this came to the, that did come to the council's attention after the agenda was posted, and there's a need to address it right away. Jackie?
Go ahead, Jackie. Okay, no, you're on mute.
There you go.
Okay, yeah.
How about now? You can hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Mayor and council, thank you for considering this item. Many apologies. As Alan alluded to, this is an urgent item. I had applied for the Bay Area Council Foundation pre-application period in February for the Green Infrastructure Grant Program, which is a Climate Resiliency Challenge grant. I got the email yesterday that we've been invited to apply for the official grant period, which is due next Monday, May 4th. So we have a week to apply for the grant at this point. So I apologize for the late notice. In order to summarize what this grant is for, though, and how it aligns with many of council's strategic priorities, including, I heard tree planting earlier, so I'm excited to tell you that the City of Watsonville's Green Infrastructure Plan is an implementation strategy designed to build resiliency to the impacts of hazards identified in the city's local hazard mitigation plan, which will be out in draft form in May, which are drought, flooding, and extreme heat. The Green Infrastructure Plan will fast-track community-driven, nature-based projects that achieve mutual goals, protect critical infrastructure, and provide multiple benefits. In addition to advancing the goals identified in the local hazard mitigation plan, the Green Infrastructure Plan will also advance the tree planting strategy identified in the city's existing Climate Action Plan and Urban Greening Plan. Climate Action Plan and Urban Greening Program identified trees for their potential to reduce urban heat island effects and provide multiple benefits. The Green Infrastructure Plan will take this a step further by identifying sites, concepts, and implementation strategies, including funding for trees and other green infrastructure located in areas with maximum benefit to the community. This grant program, we're actually taking multiple planning documents that have been developed by CDD as well as Public Works in order to streamline areas of critical need for green infrastructure and climate resiliency for the future. This grant is in the amount of $200,000, which would be 100% awarded. If awarded, it would be funded through the Bay Area Council Foundation, and we would not have to match the grant in any way. So that is the grant program and the urgency matter. Again, I apologize. We received the email last night, and I appreciate you all for considering this important issue.
Okay, this time there's questions, fine and technical question, and I see Aurelio. Go ahead, Aurelio.
Well, it's not a technical question or anything, but I just wanted to see if we could, I can make the motion to put this on the agenda as an emergency item.
Yeah, it's already on the agenda as an emergency item.
Well, I think that one of us as a city council member has to motion it to be on so we can vote on it. So it becomes an emergency. So it becomes on our, so it gets placed on our agenda legally.
Alan?
From what I understood, Alan.
I think Aurelio is correct.
Okay, so Aurelio's made a motion. Is there somebody who will second it? Ari will second this. Okay. Now
we can go back to technical questions.
Now we'll take technical and clarifying questions on this motion. Anybody like to speak on this? Katrina, and then Lowell.
How does this tie into our climate action plan? I know that we've adopted that, and it was several years back, about like over 40,000 trees within the city limits. Is it specifically for trees, and how does it tie into the current climate action plan?
Great question. Thanks for asking. So it's actually going to be complementary to the climate action plan. As the old climate action plan, we are actually in the midst of updating our climate action plan. So I'm sitting on the technical advisory committee for that effort, as well as I'm project lead on the local hazard mitigation plan. We worked with planning department to look at the downtown streets plan. So we're going to combine those efforts, and we're going to look at where the critical needs are for planting trees so that they reduce the heat island effects, in particular the heat island effects in our communities that really need them. An example would be Main Street and Walker is an area that we've identified that would be a good area for tree planting. But this will be a public effort as well, so we'll be accepting ideas for where other areas are for need. So it's complementary to climate action planning. This will only support many of our objectives.
And when, if this application goes in, we'll hear back about it?
Ideally, well, we were supposed to hear whether we could apply in March, and I think COVID stopped us. So I think the turnaround is within the next 30 days, we should know. I would have to ask the grantor that question, and I can get back.
Okay, Lowell?
Thank you, Mayor. I think the quick turnaround on this illustrates, you know, the need for us to have shovel-ready projects all the time, and to have our fishing net out for all kinds of grants. And some of them we won't get, some of them we won't even get invited to. But this illustrates to everyone, I hope, that if we have projects that are shovel ready, that we can turn them around very quickly and make a great application. I want to thank Jackie for her long time work on projects like this and beyond. So thank you, Jackie.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, this is time for public input. Is there any public input for this motion?
Give me a moment, please. I see none.
Okay, we'll bring it back to the council. Are there any further clarifying or technical questions or comments? Aurelio? Aurelio?
I just wanted to clarify. I'm here. You hear me?
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify that the motion was to put this on the agenda. It was not the motion to approve for the resolution.
Oh, thank
So
you.
I just want to make sure that we understand it. The motion that I made was to put it on the agenda.
We're going to have to take it in.
We vote on it, and then we do another vote for the resolution.
This was
Yes.
to put it on the agenda. We still will have to have a second motion.
Correct, Mayor?
To approve it. So in terms of putting it on the agenda, and I see Alan. I'm not sure why Alan's on it.
Yeah, Mayor, I just wanted to ask one additional clarification. Since technically somebody could believe that the measure is meritorious, but not believe that it meets the 2/3 standard, I would ask your permission to ask the council if anyone has any further questions or objects to placing it, considering it as an item on the agenda based on the need for immediate action and that it was brought to the attention late.
Yes, that's what we're discussing right now. Okay. And so unless there's other questions or comments, I will ask for a roll call.
Councilman Gomez,
Yes.
Estrada,
Yes.
Gonzalez,
Yes.
Hernandez,
Yes.
Hurst,
Yes, let's go green.
Parker,
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes. And so this was just to put it on the agenda. Now we need, I'll entertain a motion to approve the recommendation. And I saw Ari's name hand go up first.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve the motion as stated.
Okay, and Trina, I saw for a second.
Correct.
Okay, so we have a first and a second to approve this motion. And so now, are there any questions for clarification or technical questions or comments? Yes, Aurelio?
I'd just like to make a comment. I know with the coronavirus and everything that's going on, things do go by us, and we do forgive her because she does work hard for us in the community. And I think Watsonville has always been progressive, going green. So I think we need to keep moving in that direction.
Okay, very good. Any other comments or questions? Now is the time for public input. Is there any public input on this motion? Well, hearing none?
None.
Okay, hearing none, I bring it back to the council. Are there any further clarifying or technical questions or comments? Ari?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you, Jackie, because I know with all the other stress and strain and just distractions, the craziness of what's going on, that you're going through everything that you're going through to find this money for our city and keeping focused on business is pretty awesome. So I just want to say thank you very much, staff. And Jackie,
well, thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Hearing none, and I think we have to have 5. Is that correct, Alan? We have to have 5 votes?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay. So with that, I'll ask for roll call.
Carmen Gomez,
Yes.
Estrada,
Yes.
Gonzalez,
Gonzalez,
Hernandez,
Yes.
Hurst,
Yes.
Parker,
Yes.
I said yes.
and Garcia.
Garcia.
Yes. Okay, the motion passes. Very, very good. Okay, moving on, it's time for requests for future agenda items. Are there any requests for future items? Ari?
Yes, I'd like to request to put on the agenda a resolution to celebrate all our essential workers in their hopes that, everyone in the city of Watsonville and the surrounds can step out at, let's say, 7:30 every night and get out there and bang a pot, clap and whoop for about 4 or 5 minutes and celebrate the doctors, nurses, first responders, the pharmacists, the grocery workers, the delivery drivers, the postal employees, the restaurateurs, the farm workers, and more that I haven't mentioned. And so I would like to request that be on the agenda as an official resolution.
Very good. Any other requests?
What was that request? I had got lost connection. I didn't get none of that, what you said, besides yes.
You want to repeat it, Ari?
I'd like to request a resolution to celebrate, to have the whole city celebrate and show gratitude to our essential workers for 5 minutes at 7:30 p.m. Each day to step out of your home and clap and bang a pot and whoop for the doctors, nurses, first responders, farm workers, pharmacists, grocery workers, delivery drivers, postal employees, restaurateurs, and I'm going to look, but I think, and police and fire, all our essential workers, just to show appreciation. So to have that be a resolution for our city, for all our residents to be able to celebrate, and for those outside the surrounds of Watsonville if they'd like to participate as well.
Okay. Any other requests? Lowell?
There's a lot going on with the RTC these days, and I think that we ought to have an opportunity to weigh in as a council as to what do we think of the importance of rail and trail, and be able to advise the RTC in some kind of official manner.
Okay, thank you. Other requests? I have one. Watsonville has already identified the extreme loss we're having financially as a result of this COVID-19. And we're having to look for new revenues in terms of supporting us. Well, I heard that the Santa Cruz City is considering writing a letter to the governor to repeal the tax on not being able to tax sugary beverages. And so I want to make that same request as a resolution in terms of a possibility of writing a letter to repeal not being able to tax sugar beverages. So that's my request. Okay, with that, I will adjourn this meeting and we're going to go into closed session. Yes, Ari, and then Matt. Okay, go ahead, Ari.
I'd like also to address the Seniors Council, the issues that we're having with the organization moving forward with the AARP and the Seniors Council, and whether our Seniors Council is going to stay in focus charge, the ones who brought it to us, the ones we're moving forward with Clay Kemp, who actually, I don't think there's anybody more qualified than he is to do it. I'd like that to be brought forward, so that I'd like to hear from the county to see why they think they need to take lead on this. And I think we need to have a discussion as a city council, since we were the first ones, and our representative, Lowell Hurst, has participated in this since the beginning, that we're the first ones to bring this up for the whole county and move forward with it. And the county has decided to do something else, and without our discussion, and I don't think that's appropriate.
I agree. Okay, thank you. Matt, you had something to share?
I was just going to remind the council that we had a separate line set up for closed session this afternoon, so you should all have a link to that.
Oh, we have to go to a different link?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh.
It's your appointment that's on your calendar for 2 o'clock, and it says session.
Oh, okay. Well, yes, Felipe?
Can we take a 3-minute break?
Yeah, we'll have a 3-minute break. Aurelio?
Yeah, I didn't hear whatever you said. I lost connection, and then anybody else that spoke in between.
Who didn't you hear?
Well, I lost connection right after Lowe spoke. All I could hear was see was frozen faces and no sound. So I didn't hear anything from the meeting from that point on.
You didn't hear
so I don't
Ari?
know what you said, and I don't know where we're at on the agenda.
Okay, where we are is we're still asking for requests for future agenda items. And then after that, I will adjourn to closed session, but then we have to go to a different link for closed session.
Okay. I have an item for future agenda.
Okay, go ahead.
I'd like to come back with the unjust eviction ordinance, be brought back to us to look at it, to see if we can create something when the time comes we have to remove this moratorium, that we can still add some protection to our tenants.
Well, if I understand correctly, this moratorium is until May 31st. So we will have to address it by that time. Yes.
Yeah, okay. And that's why I wanted to try to put it on the agenda for the future.
It will be on it will come to a future agenda. Yes. Any other requests for agenda items? Okay, hearing none, then I will now adjourn this meeting. We'll take a 3-minute break, and then we will come back on link for a closed session. Okay? See you in a little bit. Bye.
This conference